What is up, you guys? It's your favorite cutie Mel back again on my Soul Posh channel to give you guys yet another video. Today we're continuing the conversation around All About Love by Bell Hooks. So today we're going to be talking about chapter 2. I did read this chapter a little bit earlier, so I'm going to have to refer to the things that I underlined about this chapter. But it was really good. It kind of just is basically picking off where we left off. So it's called 2. Justice. Childhood love lessons. She starts it off by saying, severe separation in early life leaves emotional scars on the brain because they assault the essential human connection, the parent-child bond, which teaches us that we are lovable. The parent-child bond, which teaches us how to love. We cannot be whole human beings. Indeed, we may find it hard to be human without the sustenance of this first attachment. So basically it's talking about in this chapter like the importance of our first relationships, which is with our parents or your caretakers, and how that can shape you and your love life and really your life in general and who you become as a person. So one of the first things that stood out to me was when she said love was always only about a good feeling. In early adolescence, when we were whipped and told that these were punishments. In early adolescence, when we were whipped and told that these punishments were for our own good, or I'm doing this because I love you, my siblings and I were confused. So she starts off basically talking about her relationship and most people's relationship with discipline and parental figures. So it goes into depth mostly about if you've had experiences being whipped as a child, if you got spankings, if you were physically being harmed, and then also being told that you're being loved and people are doing these things to you because they love you. She's basically saying that that's abuse. So, and I feel like most of us, because we've been through this, I don't know, I'm gonna speak for myself. I know being African American, a lot of our diaspora physically punished children. So I used to grow up thinking that this was normal. All of my friends when I was growing up, for the most part, all were getting spankings and stuff like that. I think it's like a cultural thing that has become normal. But in this chapter, she really challenges that, and she challenges like the ability for you to claim that you have a loving childhood and you know love when you also had to coincide that with abuse. So diving further, the next thing that I had highlighted here is, as children grow, they associate love more with acts of attention, affection, and caring. They still see parents who attempt to satisfy their desires as giving love. So basically, this is basically like just what I was talking about, how like even in the first chapter, how she said it's really hard for a lot of us to admit that maybe that our childhoods were not as loving as we remember them to be, because we cling to the good things. We as children think about the times that maybe our parents got us ice cream or did something nice for us or gave us something. And she also talks a lot in this chapter about how like children are too young to kind of understand really anything more than like, you know, my needs are being met and this feeling is good, my parent is doing this for me and it's making me happy. So just attaching the feeling of love to a feeling very early on. And because we do that, and we don't really have definitions, as mentioned in the first chapter, we don't really have that clear definition of what love is. A lot of us grow into adults still thinking that love is just about a feeling. It's just that good feeling when someone does something for us or when someone treats us nice, which is really how I always thought about it too. I remember in the last video, I told you guys I always associated love with just like being cared for, like being caring towards someone or being shown that someone cares about you by maybe an act of service or maybe getting you a gift or, you know, being nice to you. But basically she's just talking about how it's really just a cycle. A lot of pretty much everybody who doesn't experience a very loving childhood goes on to raise kids who maybe they also just in their mind have not had the time or the mental space to challenge, you know, if that's the right thing or how you should raise children or if certain things are normal and loving. And I can definitely say that I agree with this. And I think that as I'm a young parent, and my child is now 10 years old, and I can say that I'm just now getting to the point where like I decided over like the last year or two that I just didn't want to really raise my child how I was raised, even though by default, in the beginning, and especially when he was younger, I took on a lot of the attitudes and the actions of my parents because I didn't know love. Like, I didn't have a clear definition of what it was to be a loving parent, because even though I care for my child, I feel like I still had so much to learn, and I'm still am learning as I'm reading this book as well about what that actually looks like, because I do want to model love to my son so that he knows what real love is. And hopefully a lot of the things that I went through and a lot of struggles that I went through in relationships, hopefully it's not too late for me to model real love to him so that he knows love when he sees it. And I also plan to have conversations with him as I learn what love is and define to him what love is, so that he knows and that he could go on and be a better parent than even I was to him, and hopefully break the cycle. So basically, in this book, she's really talking about how we get to a more loving society, and how it starts with the children, how everything starts with the children, how everything starts with our childhood, how our look and out view of what we think love is. It starts with our parents. The next thing I went and highlighted was she's basically talking about another book and referencing a book called Raised in Captivity, Why Does America Fail Its Children by Lucia Dodson. She says she documents the reality of lovelessness in the lives of a huge majority of children in the United States. Every day, thousands of children in our culture are verbally and physically abused, starved, tortured, and murdered. They are true victims of intimate terrorism, and that they have no collective voice and no rights. They remain the property of parenting adults who do with them as they will. There can be no love without justice, which kind of ties it back into what this chapter is even about. Then I also had highlighted I wanted the group to acknowledge that being physically hurt or abused by grown-ups when we are children has harmful consequences in our adult life. So basically, in this chapter, she talks about how, I forgot whether she was at a party, but she was at some gathering with other adults, and everyone was talking about how even though they were basically beat as children, that their parents loved them and things like that. And she had basically called out one of the guys who said, who basically had a single mom as a parent, and she used to beat him or whatever. And he was saying that, oh, he's fine, he turned out fine, and his mom still loves him. And she challenged him by saying, well, maybe if your mom, the woman in your life, didn't beat you, maybe you wouldn't be like a raging misogynist, or maybe you wouldn't secretly hate women subconsciously, because your first ideal of love was a woman, your first love, who treated you badly and abused you. So you see how that can warp our opinion on love. I feel like this book is very sobering, because it really does just show how I can see how people easily can become victims of domestic violence and things like that, and having low self-confidence, low self-worth, because if as a child, where most of our patterns are formed, if we have no choice but to accept certain abuses and things like that, then a lot of that becomes instilled in us, because as a child you can't really fight back to a certain extent. You have to just do what you have to do to survive, and you have to depend on these parents who basically own you to be good to you, So basically this chapter is about children being at the mercy of lovelessness, and how if we shift the definition and the awareness of what actual love is, how that could change the world, which I feel like is very powerful, and I think that is true. One of the most important social myths we must debunk if we are to become a more loving culture is one that teaches parents that abuse and neglect can coexist with love. So basically that just was the next thing I highlighted, but that's basically what I was just talking about. We cease to protest his violations of our boundaries and ignoring our sense of being individuals with needs. So this is where she also just talks about a child who is abused, how like as a child you stop fighting back to a certain extent, and you just have to accept what it is that your reality is, because it's not like you could just walk out and take care of yourself. So next, when Shelby describes his childhood, it's clear that his dad had affection for him and also gave him some care some of the time. However, his dad did not know how to give and receive love. The affection he gave was undermined by the abuse. So then she went on to talk about how as kids, even if you are experiencing lovelessness, it doesn't really change your wanting to be loved and to receive love. Like, it doesn't necessarily stop you from wanting to be loved, but it does warp your perception of it to a certain extent, because you want to believe that your parents care about you, you want to believe that they love you, but a lot of us just don't know what love is truly and how to be loving. Let's see. Like many abused children, male and female, these men were beaten by mothers, fathers, and other parental caregivers. And so I highlighted this because this part of the book talks about how a lot of the people in jail for like violence and things like that have scars from abuse that they experienced as children. So that just shows you how lack of love that you experience as a child can have a very lasting effect on your life and who you become in this life and what kind of things you might be subjected to, even jail. Okay. And then I think, let's see. He shares, I was brought up to believe that love is rooted in blood relationships. You naturally loved anyone in your family. Love was not a choice. The love I learned was about bound by duty and obligation. My family taught me our culture's rules and beliefs about love. Even with the best intentions of our parents, often confused love with what we now call abuse. So basically just sums up a prologue from Creating Love by John Bradshaw. Basically just, it just highlights once again, bringing the point home that like a lot of the things that we thought were love growing up can actually be abuse. Like sometimes people just don't know better. Let's see. And then she goes on to talk about how parents can discipline children without physical punishment, obviously, but even punishment. You can show your child discipline and instill discipline in your children by giving them chores, making sure they clean up after themselves when they do certain things, like, making up their bed, giving them tasks that teach them, how to take care of themselves and how to, be a disciplined human being. You don't always have to punish through isolation or physical beatings. The reality was, however, that parents who come from unloving homes never had learned how to love and cannot create loving home environments to see them as realistic, even when watching them on television. So then she goes on to talk about how, like, on TV, most of the time, like, more loving families are modeled, but how because our own perceptions of love can be warped, we can see those things as being like unrealistic, or that doesn't work. Like, you can't discipline a child by teaching them a lesson, like I just said, like through acts of discipline instead of punishing. So that was very interesting, and it really just made me reflect a lot on what punishment was for me. I know that I have a lot of my childhood, I remember being on punishment, always feeling isolated, always being thrown away, everything taken away from me when I was doing something, maybe acting out. A lot of the times I felt like I had harsh punishments, long punishments that were just unnecessarily long and cruel. I felt like my parents didn't know how to discipline me in a healthy, loving way. But I have empathy. This book is even making me have more empathy for my parents and for the way that I was raised, because I just recognize this book isn't about blaming our parents. It's not about blaming the people who don't know how to love. It's more so understanding why most people don't know what love is and why people are the way that they are, starting with childhood, and how that a lot of the times we're just repeating what we know. So until you have an opportunity to have your eyes opened up, say by a book, or maybe encountering someone else who has a different way, we just default to what we know. So I'm just thankful that I'm still young enough, and my child is young enough for me to demonstrate a loving parent and a loving mom and a loving love to him and for him. And it's making me feel, it's making it a little bit easier for me to forgive, because I just know that we just repeat patterns. So nobody's perfect. We only know what we know until we know it, basically. So that's chapter 2 of All About Love by Bell Hooks. If you guys are enjoying this book, make sure to go ahead and click the link down below. If you don't have it yourself, you can order yourself a paperback book. It's pretty cheap. It's under $20. I have the links down below in Amazon links. And also I have the 8 rules by Jay Shetty that we'll be covering next. So if you guys want to just go ahead and order both books, and we can just continue to read together and share together, and like be transparent and vulnerable about our feelings, then hop in. And I just also want to say thank you to everyone who's been watching these videos and leaving comments telling me and thanking me for being vulnerable, because it's really showing me that there's strength in my story. These past couple videos have shown me how I really so desperately just wanted to be so far removed and perfect, and I'm over it, and but it's just showing me that my story has purpose, and we can learn from what we've been through, and also it's okay to share what you've been through, because it can help someone else, and it also makes us more human, and it helps us to connect with each other. So thank you for being a part of this heart opening for me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. As always, stay posh and stay cute. I'll see you guys in the next video. And don't forget to get your Be My Lover bracelets, and check out my EP, Be My Lover, as well. All links are down below in the description. Bye.